I'm always amazed at how far a little inspiration can take you. Come with me and I'll show you what I learned. Hey guys, welcome back to Frances Quilts. Well, when I was in public accounting, I had a manager who every Monday morning would come to me and say, I want a meeting at 9:30 and bring your 2 hard basket. Now, that was a great description of the procrastination that I was doing on certain things. Things that I wasn't sure I knew how to do, things that I had just built up in my head that were going to be so hard, but in reality, they only took 15 minutes. Well, I love that, and I've thought about that often throughout my life. What is in my 2 hard basket? And I recently realized that my quilting has a 2 hard basket as well. And this quilt has been in that 2 hard basket. If you were here last week, we talked about this quilt. It's a Quilt-of-Valor that my friend Marnie and I are making for one of our friends from church. We're both excited about the project, and she's done a magnificent job of designing and piecing this quilt, and now it's my turn to add quilting. Believe it or not, I'm scared to do it. I'm afraid I'm going to mess things up. So I had a big breakthrough last week. Now, if you were here last week, you saw us quilt the flags that I plan on putting in the borders. That just got me to thinking about stars and stripes and stars and stripes and stars and stripes. So I decided that my quilting was all going to be star and stripe related, and that made it so much easier to think about. The first project was to quilt these squares in here, and I couldn't figure out what to do. I thought about originally just putting a whole bunch of stripes back and forth like this, but that's going to be boring. So then I thought, what if I made little sections of stripes? So I had like 3 or 4 lines coming across here, and then a bounce down, and then 3 or 4 more, and then a bounce down, that sort of thing. I liked that idea, but it was going to be pretty static, and I didn't really want it to do that. So then I had the idea of what if I made that middle section a curve? So I made it like my flag flying. So now I'm getting excited about this. I got out my whiteboard and I just did some calculations, and I thought, okay, if I do this kind of areas and do it just like this, it'll be perfect. My problem was I thought I was going to have to do a whole lot of marking to do this, and I didn't want to do that. So I marked the first block and I sat down at my machine, and the first thing I did was, instead of quilting those lines a 1/2 inch apart like I'd planned, I started quilting them a 1/4 inch apart, and I decided, okay, it's a design choice. They're going to be a 1/4 inch now. As I did a few of them, I found they were super easy, and I only needed to mark 1 line. So I've quilted a bunch of them already, but let's go quilt a few more. You can see that because this is a bigger quilt, I have gone full out with my hanging system. I have my dog grooming bars back there with the clamps, and you see that's just holding that fabric up off the bed of the machine a little bit. I also have my Krista Watson quilt blocks on the edge and the side here. Just helps keep that quilt from falling off. You can see it's dammed up there against the block. And then finally, I have my trusty pillow in my lap, because by doing that pillow there, it means I keep a smooth fabric going all this direction. I don't have it hanging off any place along here, and that works perfectly. When I finished quilting last night, I was down here in this corner, so I'm ready to do this block. So let's just do that together. I did decide that there was 1 line that I needed to mark, and it just helped me with my centering. That is to mark this center line right here. I've got that. I'm going to mark 1/2 inch away from that center line. And what that is going to tell me, that line is going to tell me where I'm going to start doing my wavy lines. So when I get to this line, I'm doing my lines here. When I get here, it means that I can just use that line to center my wave. And that's so much easier. It's very difficult to do a wave and have it end up at the same place here as over here. So that's the only line that I'm having to mark. So my ruler, I'm going to lay on the first line right here would be a 1/4 inch, and then this would be 1/2 inch. I want it to be a little bit more, so I'm going to go about halfway in between the first mark here and the second mark. I'm going to center that coming down here, and then I'm going to be ready to stitch that first line. To me, this is the hardest part, is just doing that stitch in the ditch across here, because I want to keep it so that the blue doesn't show. Since I'm using this dark blue thread on a light blue fabric, I want to do my best to make it not show. Let's pop that in there. It's easier going the other direction, I will say. Let's go. 2. Let's bring it over. So I've gone just past that mark. I'm going to line up the edge of my ruler along the line that I just sewed, because that will give me a 1/4 inch line. Three. There. Oh, fart. Well, I really made a mess of that. Let's line up again the edge of my ruler along the line that I just sewed, and let's bring it back. That's 4. Let's do one more. Line up along there. Let's come back down. Now, as I said, I have marked where my next stitching is going to go to, so I'm going to come into the ditch and I'm going to stitch across. Now this is the fun one, because I'm going to get rid of my ruler and I'm just going to do a wavy line all the way across. Let's go. A little above, a little below, a little above. This is the reason I draw this line in, because it gives me a guide of where I'm going. So I'm going to come across to the edge here and stitch 1/4 inch over. I know I'm at a 1/4 inch because my side of my foot right here is right up against that 1/4 inch. Now I'm going to follow that one back around again. It's not going to be exact, but that's okay. I don't mind if there are a few little movements in it that are different. Same thing, come across till that edge of my foot is against the line I just sewed. Let's do another one. That's 3. And there's a reason that I count the lines, because the very first one that I did, I finished the entire block and then went, oh, I only did 4 lines there. So I'm counting them now as I do them. So let's do number 4. Back over, and number 5. I really am enjoying that because I think it gives that look of the flag flying in the breeze. So the next thing I'm going to do is stitch along here and then do a straight line. But where does that straight line belong? I have done some calculations and I know that I want the edge, this edge right here, to be lined up with this line right here that I've drawn. You can see there are lines already drawn on here, here and here and here and all these different places, but I have added another 1/4 inch line along here. Did that years ago and continue to use it. But my line is going to be a little bit past that, so I'm going to line up so that it's just maybe an 1/8 of an inch over from the edge of my, my stitching right here. So now I'm going to bring this over. I'll move my ruler back a little bit to give me some room to get there. Okay, I'm going to line my ruler up where I want it to be. And again, I'm looking to keep it straight with this line up here as much as I can, and I'm ready to stitch. When I first started doing this, I was planning on just doing all of the light blue squares. And then I realized when I get to here, I'm right in this corner, and my plan is to do orange peels along inside these blue triangles. So why not do all of those, get back to here, and then I can come up and start my next block. Start in this corner, I'm going to come and do a big arc like this. I'm going to do smaller, big arcs on these long diagonals, and I'll do a little bit smaller arcs on the shorter sides. So let's get to the corner and do those. Okay, I'm back in that point, so I'm ready to do my next block. All right, here's an area that I have finished the quilting on, and I'm super happy with it. I think that adding that line in the middle with a little bit of curve to it has given a little more excitement and interest to this quilt. Well, as you can see, it actually ended up being pretty easy to do and amazingly fast. I'm over halfway through with this section, and this was the part I was really worried about, was how long it was going to take to quilt all of those areas. And the great thing too, I now have quilted all of my star blocks at the same time. So this has just worked out super well, and I'm very excited about it. The question is, what's going to go in some of these borders? I'm thinking stars and stripes, and stars and stripes. You get the picture. So you see what happens when you finally get that little spark of inspiration. That's all you need. Once you get that, you're off and going. I'll leave a link here to last week's video where we looked at Golden Threads papers and you saw me quilt this wonderful flag design. I can't wait to get to the border so that I can do that. And by the way, I think I figured out how to do it freehand. I hope you found something that helped you today. If you did, give it a thumbs up and be sure and subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. Guys, thank you so much for joining me here today. And as always, I look forward to seeing you next time on Frances Quilts. Remember, if you like what you've seen, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Please check out my website and daily blog at francesquilts.com, and I can be found on Facebook and Instagram at Frances Quilts. Thanks so much for joining me. Hope to see you again soon.